Okay, so this is a video with a continuation of stage 2. So up to this point, you have been working on the wounds that underlie your inner critic pattern, specifically the exiles that are being protected by your inner critic part. Now, there are some additional aspects, especially for inner critic patterns, about the possible origins of where your inner critic pattern came from. So we're going to cover these 3 pages and what goes with them. So the first one is childhood conditioning. So your inner critic pattern could have been conditioned by a parent may have modeled this behavior. In other words, if the parent was critical, your inner critic part may have modeled, taken on being self-critical because of how your parent was critical of you. They also may have taught you to behave that way, told you that that was the way to be self-critical. Maybe you were rewarded for being self-critical. Maybe you were punished if you weren't self-critical, and so on. So you get to explore that. And so down here, you can choose one person. Let's say, let's just pick mother arbitrarily. It looks like I already did that. So normally, if you're coming in the first time, you would just leave this and you click here and you would add new stuff. But since I've already done this, instead of repeating that, I'm just going to click here to go to some of the stuff that I already filled in. Oh, I guess I didn't fill it in. Well, it's here anyway. So, person who conditioned your inner critic pattern, mother. So what are the things that happened? Mother taught me to criticize myself. Mother frequently self-criticized. Mother valued overworking. Mother expected me to do poorly. So you just check whichever of these seem to fit. And then what did she say to you or say or imply that fostered your being judgmental of yourself? You're such a screw up. What makes you think you can do that? What, you're doing that again, etc. So, and you can of course add your own. And then what ages did it happen? I won't bother with that. And then the situations where mother acted this way. When she felt annoyed about something, when she drank too much. So you check whichever of those there are, and then close out. And then if there was another person who also contributed to your conditioning for your inner critic pattern, you can do one of these others. And then when you're finished, you go to the next page. Now this is another page that's related to the origins of inner critics, and this is in the case that, as often happens, at least to some extent, maybe I should just do a little explanation here. Very often with inner critics, there are 2 aspects to where they came from. One is, as we've already talked about, is that they are trying to protect you or trying to protect an exile of yours. The other is that their self-critical behavior may be modeled after a parent, and often it's both. So this deals with the modeling after a parent, and so in this case, there's a guided meditation to actually where you work with your inner critic part to help it let go of the self-critical behavior as it came from a parent or other caretaker figure. And so there's a guided meditation that actually, from that aspect, helps you work with your inner critic part to help it let go, to help it recognize where it got that behavior, and to actually, release it back to the parent that it came from. It's more sophisticated than that, but that's the basic idea. So this is an additional way to help you let go of your inner critic. You can take notes about it here. And then the third extra page has to do with what we call the criticized child. And I've already talked to you about that. So remember, the criticized child is the exile that gets hurt or triggered by your inner critic attacks. So if the inner critic says you're worthless, then the criticized child feels worthless. That's one kind of exile. The other kind of exile is what we talked about earlier, which we call the protected child. Remember, the inner critic is a protector, so it's trying to protect you, protect an exile of yours by being self-critical. Often, of course, it doesn't work, but the critic doesn't realize that in most cases. So we dealt with the protected child in the other stage 2 video. Here we're now dealing with the criticized child. And so you all, in addition to doing some work to heal the protected child to free up the inner critic, you also might want to heal the criticized child in the case that it's different from the protected child. So that's what this page is for. And here are the most common criticized child wounds: the judgment wound, where you were judged as a child; the basic deficiency wound, where you feel like there's something fundamentally wrong with you; the unlovable wound, where you believe you're unlovable; and the shame wound, where you were shamed as a child. So if your criticized child might have one of these wounds, you can click on any of these and go through the same kind of, let me just show you. So if we click on judgment wound, then here we are. We are in back in that same set of stage 2 pages that we discussed in the previous video, except this time it relates to a criticized child wound. Let's see now. I want to go back though. Oh wait, well, let me just go back. It's probably the easiest way. Okay. So, so once you've done, and you can choose if it feels appropriate, you can help to heal one of these criticized exiles. And then when you're done, you can come back here, and if you want to do another one, you can. And then when you're finished with that, you go on, you do next, and I think this takes us to stage 3, where we go, which will be covered in a different video. Okay, see you later.